Hi, this video is going to address the cultural aspects of the Maya and also the way that archaeologists are working to preserve the history of the Maya. So as I mentioned earlier, there was this ball game that was certainly for entertainment purposes in some cases, but it also had very high stakes for some people. Some people trained for this at a very, very young age and understood that this could be a way to resolve conflicts. It also could be a way to determine status in society. So these games often had a real heavy stakes to them. So if you went to the archaeological site at Kobat today, they'll tell you about the fact that in some cases the losers of these games would be relegated to essentially like a slave type status, not just for them, but their kin and their people. So this was part of the cultural aspects of the Maya. Also, a lot of people were engaged in agriculture. So the staples were corn, as was the case in most of Mesoamerica, corn, squash, and beans. And the differences in the class status was often quite rigid. But some of the top leaders and the wealthy would have these grand parties, and there was feasting, and there was dance, and there was theater. So this was a pretty thriving culture and civilization. So for the workers, though, the common person, the common agricultural worker, life could be pretty difficult, especially because the Mesoamericans didn't have any domesticated pack animals, as other civilizations throughout the world did at that time. The average person would live in a wooden home with thatched roofs, and if you go to these areas that are, still have Maya people today in the Yucatan Peninsula, this is a way that a lot of them, certainly not all of them, but a lot of them still live in these types of dwellings. And you can kind of see the history behind it, that in the classic Maya civilization, a lot of people would have their own gardens that would help them feed themselves, and even in these cities. So you might be importing food from kind of the periphery, the edge of the cities. But even in the cities, people would often have gardens around their homes. But some of the wealthier people did have stone homes. But getting to the archaeology and the history here is really important, the way that we kind of preserve history. And archaeologists are doing a lot to preserve this. Now, part of the problem of the actual history, the written history, that the Spanish, when they came mostly in the 1500s, the Spanish destroyed a lot of the Maya books and the Maya writings. And there were only 4 major books that are known to have survived. There may be others, of course, out there. But there still is, we can't look at this as the Maya as a lost people. It's often talked about like the Maya are a lost civilization or a lost people. Because today, in Mexico and a lot of the states of Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula, the state of Yucatan, Quintana Roo, Chiapas, and also in the country Belize, they are significant minorities in those places. And then you have in Guatemala, the Maya people are actually a majority. So it's not really a lost people, although the way of life and the past had in some cases been lost due to the Spanish, destroying a lot of the documents. But a lot of the archaeological work is going really through a kind of revolutionary era at this point. The archaeologists are starting to use this thing called LiDAR technology, where they more or less can kind of like make the trees disappear in a sense from these images. So they can kind of look through the jungle in these places that were lost to the jungle. You can fly over them and see the kind of structural remnants of some of these ancient cities. So this can be done now. They're doing it more with drones, so it's becoming cheaper than flying a helicopter over or something of that nature. So there really is this kind of revolution going on in the archaeology in Mesoamerica in general. So also after of course, have to remember that the Spanish basically conquered this area in the 1500s and on into the 1900s. in the 1800s when Mexico gained their independence. But a lot of the Maya people are kind of a distinct and don't, they may view themselves as Mexicans but still have this sort of unique heritage. And so a lot of the archaeological sites today, there's a big debate over, should it be the Mexican national government that controls these sites, or should it be relegated to the Maya people, local Maya people, for these archaeological sites?